G'day trendsetters, welcome to episode 7 of the Wabi podcast. Today I'd like to talk about harmony. Harmony. It's one of the principles of the way of tea, Chanayu, and I've been pondering principles of tea in relation to my own school, the Ueda which is one of the warrior class schools of tea. In the world of tea we have merchant class schools and warrior class schools, and they have distinct flavour and emphasis on the principles of tea. And in the warrior class schools, of course, we embrace the principles wake seijaku, harmony, respect, purity and tranquility, but it kind of doesn't feel like they say everything in relation to our practice. So rather than try and reinterpret these beautiful principles for my own school and my own practice and for warrior class tea, I just thought for my own practice and for teaching my own students, it would be nice to identify principles that have an urgency with our day and lives right here, right now. And sure enough, they have some commonalities with these time-honoured principles. So the principles that I've identified through working with my students over the last few years are harmony, student of nature, practice realization, purity, no borders, and aesthetic. So there's 6. And I'll talk about these in coming podcasts, I guess, when I feel the urge. So on to harmony today. Why don't you polish the floor, grab a tea, and tune in. Rightio, so Morata Juko, who lived in the 15th century and is said to be the godfather of Wabi, and why that is, he identified the Wabi aesthetic that was coming up through Japanese poetry and tried to make it a physical practice through the way of tea. So rather than lovely flashy objects and lots of bling coming across from the Asian continent, he tried to identify a deeper spirit and spirituality linked to the aesthetic idea of Wabi and identify it in objects that you could use in tea practice that weren't necessarily as flashy, of things decorated with mother of pearl and gold and silver and sparkly glazes, and rather try and find this idea of Wabi in rustic pots that might have housed rice grains and are a bit wobbly and rough, but still have this life force coursing through it, like all the small details of life that often get looked over. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Wabi. The wake seijaku principles were something that Morata Juko identified and tried to live through his own practice of tea. And studying Morata Juko's literature, Sen Rikyu thought these 4 principles had a lot of gold in them, despite his practice of Wabi, and tried to bring out this spiritual gold and develop it even more in his own practice of tea. So wake seijaku, harmony, respect, purity and tranquility, are very heavily identified with Rikyu's style of tea. And Rikyu's tea is promoted through the merchant class schools, and most notably the 3 senke, or the houses of Sen Rikyu, being Urasenke, Motosenke and Mushinakoji Senke. And because there's so much literature that comes out of these 3 schools, well, most notably the Urasenke and Motosenke houses, wake seijaku kind of doesn't really feel like the warrior class's own set of principles. And certainly the interpretation of wake seijaku in warrior class schools by reading the literature that comes out of the Sen families, there's a slight difference of interpretation every now and again. You think, I reckon we do that a little bit differently, or evoke a bit of a different essence of these 4 principles in the way that we conduct our tea. So this is only natural, like Sen Rikyu was exploring very profound spirituality, small spaces, dark, more yin-orientated expression of tea, in contrast to the founder of the warrior class schools of tea, Furuta Oribe's expression, which was more light, dynamic, and a yang-orientated approach to tea. So yin and yang, different different expressions of the same life force, but still that's going to influence the way that wake seijaku, harmony, respect, purity and tranquility, are held and expressed in one's practice of tea. One crucial thing we have to note before we start to unpack the etymology of the character for wa, harmony, is it also means peace. The word for peace in spoken Japanese today is heiwa. It has that character wa as one of the two characters. But the image of the character in itself, of course, a Chinese character affords multiple interpretations and can couch multiple English words in the one character. So in the layers of meaning encapsulated in this single character, we have harmony and also a strong sense of peace. And the way that this wa character is composed is on the left side, we have a symbol for a samurai warrior, and on the right side, we have a symbol for mouth, opening, or gateway. So it's a warrior standing before the gate of one's martial path, making a pact for peace. It's a very profound image. You can sense the internal struggle towards the outer struggle for both peace within and peace without. So it's not a martial path of domination and authoritarianism. It's more by necessity, I'm going out to fight for what's right. And that right is also an internal investigation, constant internal investigation. So paradoxically, there's quite a lot of tension intertwined with the image of harmony, that inner and outer struggle to realise harmony in one's world. And this could be why that the samurai of Japan turned towards pursuits like tea to work through that inner struggle. There also needs to be a lot of work on one's spirit, on one's inner life, to constantly refine and soften those addictive patterns of behaviour. So rather than being too fixated on a certain idea because you might be wrong, work on that inner life through tea to soften those calcified ideas so that you're not fighting against entropy and the generative force of life, but rather embracing transience and the dynamic course of life that changes and necessitates changes and evolution in one's thinking and the way that one fights for what is just and right in that particular epoch of time. So wa, or harmony, is a dynamic concept. Wa, harmony, is a doing word. It's not trying to maintain the status quo. We're trying to find common ground. So harmony is finding common ground. It's not trying to maintain some idealized version of the status quo. Important point to make is, as this is one of the central principles of the way of tea, it's not about being evangelical in the tea room. You're not going to go in there with mind for, I'm going to change these people, i.e. my guests. I'm going to give them a big bowl of harmony and show them the light, and therefore they will be better people and go off and embrace the same values that I have, and everything will be okay. Because that's trying to change the world with your own view of what's right. But there's always in the background the sense that you might not be right, and you're going to explore that. You find the common ground, rescinding some ideas, receding, as well as advancing. The idea of finding common ground as an active pursuit and not conforming to the status quo doesn't mean pushing forward your view of the world and forcing others to embrace it and hoping that pushing your own deep-grounded beliefs is the way to find harmony. Because if you're going about changing the world in that way, it's just going to create a lot of volatile argument and bad tension. You want good tension in which people grow and change healthily, not change by force. You're not going to belt them over the head with reason. Rather, you just want to let the beauty and the truth of what you find valuable, i.e. the practice of tea, shine and let people be moved by that. So rather than trying to change the world, you're just sharing your appreciation for the beautiful and the true things that you find in your practice. And your practice could be philosophy or another art, not the way of tea, Western painting. Just let these things and the beauty and the truth of these things speak for themselves as you show your deep appreciation for what it is that you embrace as meaningful. And by sharing these things with bliss, love, and joy, naturally, people will also be interested in finding out more deeply as to why you love these things and find them valuable, and will start to take on these ideas naturally. This is a more healthy, life-sustaining way and way for mutual flourishing, rather than by making everybody accept the force of your reason. It seems that Prince Shotoku, who was one of the early emperors of Japan, had a similar thing in mind when he wrote the first constitution of Japan in 604. The first article of this 17-article constitution is very famous, and it says, "Harmony is to be valued, and contentiousness avoided. All people are inclined to partisanship, and few are truly discerning. But when those above and those below are harmonious, the disposition of affairs comes about naturally." So, how relevant this is to our modern day. Harmony is to be valued. Yes, we're all trying to get along and fight for equality and a fair go. And contentiousness avoided. Nobody likes to have to go through the day arguing and fighting with other people. All people are inclined to partisanship, and few are truly discerning. People like me think that the way of tea is the answer. Welcome to partisanship. But you need to be truly discerning. Actually, it's not for everybody. It's just one of the beautiful arts in the world where people find meaning and can express compassion and develop compassion for other people, and therefore strive to promote harmony in their own worlds. So great. We need to share these things and these ideas and not cling on to the thought that your way is the one true way, because it's not. Be discerning about what the timeless truths are to share and what are just cultural vestiges of your modern period and are not lingering timeless beauty and truth in the practice. And be prepared to sacrifice those. Be discerning. Give those things up in discourse with other people about what is really real about your practice and can be applied and shared with other people to make their lives beautiful and true as well. You need to certainly love what you do, but share it from a point of sharing your appreciation, not being partisan, thinking that yours is the only one true way. When those above and those below are truly harmonious, i.e. when those in power and those that do not have as much power, being governments and citizens in the modern way that we think about these things, when they are truly harmonious, when there's a good thriving discourse between these two factions of society, well then we have the hope for harmony. I think at the moment we've got a bit of work to do before we start to see harmony again. So with that healthy discourse between those above and those below, the disposition of affairs comes about naturally. Well, fingers crossed we can make some headway into that zone sometime soon. One of the concepts of beauty that comes out of harmony as a principle for the way of tea, especially in the warrior class schools, is kinchokan. And this word translates to tension, which doesn't necessarily have a positive resonance in the English language. But this kinchokan is an invigorating tension. This atmosphere of tension contributes positively to the overall experience of doing tea in the tea room. There's a sense of anticipation for growth and a hum of purified energy in the room that inspires one to grow and dispels any discomfort. And there's a promise of something special, but you don't know what it is yet. And it's that sort of tension, not anything that has an unpleasant sense of discomfort or anxiety. The healthy tension that I'm talking about too in interpersonal relationships and the state of being in a tea room is also expressed on a practical level through the way that we select and choose and harmonise our utensils that we use in tea. So rather than trying to go for a set of matching things or a set of utensils that share common colours and harmonise through these standard ways, when we think about the pieces, our art objects that we want to decorate the tea room with, and also our utensils that we use in the preparation for tea, we want to have a healthy tension between the pieces so that their differences evoke the unique beauty of the other implements used. So just as an orchestra has many different instruments of shapes and sizes and sounds, they can all come together where their differences enhance the beauty of the other. Wasn't it Michael Franti who said, "All the freaky people make the beauty of the world"? That's a general gist of what it's like to think about your toriawa set, your pieces that you choose for your particular tea gathering. You want to have differences that complement and enhance the beauty of the differences and particularities and the unique characteristics of the other utensils. So rather than going for common colours, common shapes, and matching pieces, there's a beauty of contrast which creates a sense of movement and dynamism that contributes to this healthy state of tension in the tea room. People say that you shouldn't talk about politics in the tea room these days, but tea was actually practiced as an excuse to talk about politics in the past. But what it does is going through the ritual process of walking through the garden and dispelling that clinging and attachment to your beliefs and ideas in the tea garden and entering the tea room with a fresh approach to interacting with human beings gives everyone an opportunity to further and progress and evolve their thinking, whether it be politics or religion or spirituality or art, aesthetics, human relationships, whatever. Tea gives us a space where we can be noble and compassionate about the way that we conduct our discourse. So it's actually quite an ideal space to talk about opposing political ideas, as long as everybody is prepared to lift the conversation up to a space where we're respectful and have reverence for the fact that we may be wrong, and be prepared to change and be supple in the way that we think about things. Another interesting expression of this kinchokan, or aesthetic of tension, that finds an expression in my own school of tea, it can be seen through one of the calligraphy works left behind by our founder, Ueda Soko. It says, "Mon ni zokushi no ga nashi," which translates to, "I welcome no layman to my abode." And that could seem, at face value, as quite standoffish. I welcome no layman to my abode. It kind of sounds that you're putting yourself higher than other people and you only want people that think like you, walk and talk like you, and are at the same level as refinement as you to come and do tea with you, and it becomes sort of like an in club. But actually, when you think about the deeper meaning of "I welcome no layman to my abode," on the contrary, the deeper meaning of this phrase is that I welcome everybody to my abode with the sincere wish that we may all be lifted up through this meeting through tea. So "I welcome no layman" means that as soon as you enter my door and sit down and start the proceedings to share tea with me, we are entering a space where we are pursuing something more noble and higher that will evolve us both so that we may transcend the everyday, and therefore lifting both of us as lay people up to something that is more aware and awakened to the deeper truths and themes that course through our reality. So tea people, bloody share your appreciation for the art that you do and the values that it embraces, like harmony, but don't have to force it on other people. And people that don't do tea but are curious, come to tea with an open heart to see into the love and the joy of our practice and that appreciation that we can share with you. And through these meetings of different arts, cultures, spiritual orientations, cultural persuasions, we can find common ground, creating a new status quo that we will eventually have to transcend as well. So there's no bloody end to the work of harmony. It's a doing word forever and ever and ever. And that's exactly as it should be, because what's the way of tea if there's an end? The way is infinite, and thus we progress both spiritually, culturally, and as human beings forever through our practice. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to those thoughts about harmony. If you have any disharmony with what it was that I said, please chuck your own thoughts in the comments, and together we can try and find some sort of common ground. And if you'd like to support my endeavours further, you can go to my website, buy some tea. You can buy the book Pearl Among the Clouds. If you want to learn the way of tea, please approach me for lessons. I am accepting students at the moment. Also, if you'd like to support this podcast and my other work translating and writing about the beauty of the way of tea and bringing up more of the literature of the warrior class schools, you can support me on Patreon. There's a growing media library with all the different procedures of tea, lots of my talks about different Zen phrases that we use in the tea ceremony. These podcasts, of course, all kept and maintained in a well-structured order of different themes related to the way of tea and its cultural practices and spirituality. So I'd love you to have your support over there. But right here, right now, thank you very much for listening all the way to the end of this podcast. You have my best wishes, and rock the tea house.